I want everybody to put their hands together for me. I want to talk about somebody real special tonight. I want to scream so loud for you, 'cause I'm so proud of you. And let me tell you what I'm about to do. I know I act a fool. I promise you I'm going back to school. I just hear what you allow for me. I just want you to be proud. I want to tell the whole world about a friend of mine.
Hello everybody and welcome in to Kickin It. Kind of rebranding even though it's the exact same name, or restarting I guess you could say. It's a new season, or preseason, so I think this is a good time to get it started. I'm Noah Taborda alongside Jake Liker, currently simulcasting on both Infinity Sports Network and National Sports Radio on Spreaker.com. So basically, if you haven't listened to any of the old Kickin' Its, we're going to bring you a lot of the soccer news all around the world. In fact, we're going to be talking a lot about France today for Ligue 1 because the leagues are coming up, starting in early August and spanning through late-ish, I guess you could say, August. Transfer news, any competitions going on, international play, qualifying matches, we will have that for you. So, without further ado, let me introduce my co-host, Jake Liker, over in LA. Jake, how you doing?
I'm good. My patriotism has been shot. You know, you may have heard of this whole Gold Cup thing going on and how we lost to Jamaica. You know, the only thing I'd be okay with Jamaica beating us at are maybe like reggae music competitions and bobsledding. I'd be very happy to see Jamaica win bobsledding. Even
Cool Runnings. Cool Runnings is a great movie. Have you seen Cool Runnings? You don't watch many movies, Jake, but have you seen it?
I've heard of it.
Oh God, another movie I have to show Jake now.
It's kind of like I haven't seen Alexander Lacazette play, but I've heard of him.
Well, he's outed himself to the world, so you know now that Jake is a very honest guy. He'll be pretty brutally honest, you know, if he has to be. I'm going to be pretty brutally honest later today as we talk about that U.S. loss to Jamaica. But we want to get into it. So first of all, social media, lots of stuff to talk about. And, of course, following us on Spreaker. Follow both National Sports Radio and Infinity Sports Network on Spreaker. You can go like us on Facebook, same names. Kickin' It does have a Facebook account. You can find it on Facebook, of course. We are at 7-something, 800-something likes. So, you know, if we could hit 1,000, that would be pretty awesome. I'd love that to happen. On the Facebook for Infinity Sports on National Sports, you can find probably all the other shows. The shows are posted as often as we can. Follow us on Twitter as well, both networks. And let's get started. Oh, at Noah Taborda on Twitter, at Jake Liker on Twitter. There we go. There we go. Now we can get started. Alright, so we're going to start it off with Ligue 1, which is kicking off, I believe, the 8th or the 7th. The 7th of August. It is the first league to kick off. Kicks off on the same day as Netherlands. It kicks off one day before the Premier League, which means we're going to have that show right after the Netherlands-Portugal show. So you can expect that sometime in early August for all of you Premier League addicts, and I know there's a lot of you out there. But Ligue 1, last year PSG won. And even though Lyon led for a little while, most people did think PSG would be the best team. Monaco dropped the spot. They ended up in 3rd. Lyon did finish 2nd. Marseille 4th. Saint-Etienne 5th. Bordeaux 6th. So Bordeaux, Saint-Etienne, and Marseille all qualified for the Europa League. Saint-Etienne and Bordeaux have to play in the playoff. Monaco will play in the playoff for the Champions League. Lyon and PSG straight in. Goal scoring, we'll get into that in a second when we talk about that. But Jake, last year was an up-and-down year for Ligue 1. PSG, an up-and-down year for them, though they did get that big win over Chelsea in the Champions League. And you know, they did have a couple of losses, but this is still a dominant team. Do you think that France is maybe in for a shake-up next year, or do you think we'll generally see the same structure as to the top of the table?
I think we'll see, like, the same mix of teams. I would be surprised if we saw this year's top 6 be any different from last year's top 6. The order, I'm sure, will probably shift around a lot. But it was close. Keep in mind, PSG, who ended up winning the entire thing, didn't even would find themselves in first place in the table until match day 30. Marseille had it from week 6 to 19, Lyon from 20 to 29, and week 33. But PSG was able to hold on. But no, it's entertaining, you know. Just because most casual soccer fans, like, PSG is the first thing that comes to mind, does not necessarily mean that they are unanimously the best team in the country.
That is true. A couple of teams lost a lot of players. So we'll go through some of the key departures. I mean, you could say Johan Cabaye was a key departure, or as Blake would call him, Cabaye Johan. But 1 year after coming to PSG, I mean, we just did the show in Boston. 1 year after coming to PSG, he's headed to Crystal Palace. In other news, Marseille absolutely rated. Best goal scorer headed to Mexico. Gignac, who actually becomes the biggest transfer in Liga MX history. Dimitri Payet is headed to West Ham, and a great signing for West Ham, of course, and he led the team in assists. And Andre Ayew, who was a star on the Ghanaian national team, is headed from Marseille to Swansea. The Swans getting a terrific player in Ayew. And also in some other news, Ferreira Carrasco, who was a big part of Monaco's deep run in the Champions League, is headed to Atletico Madrid, who have made a couple of key signings. We'll talk about that when we get into our La Liga show. And then key additions. It really hasn't been a great summer for France. El Shaarawy headed to Monaco from AC Milan, and Bovo, and this isn't even an addition because it's just going from Guingamp to Lyon. But I guess it's an addition nonetheless. Jake, it seems to be that France, you know, and this seems to be a common theme starting to happen. You know, it's England and Spain stockpiling talent, and then everybody else is just slowly starting to feed them. You had Karl-Heinz Rummenigge for Bayern Munich coming out and saying we can't do this anymore because literally England is taking over us. What do you think about this outflux? That's not a real word, but the outflux, I think, of players from France.
I think it's an absolute travesty, especially because of all the players that were so talented that have left. And I think you forgot the most crucial departure, none other than the one and only Solomon Kalou.
Shame.
From Lille. Gone not 2 weeks after I picked him to score the most goals in France, because, hey, he seemed high up on the list, but wasn't the leading scorer, so that might make me sound smart. He ended up getting transferred to Hertha Berlin, and ended up facing the Berlin Wall. So, I stockpiled up a little more on my knowledge this year, but France isn't stockpiling on talent, it's getting rid of it, and I think it's great for Premier League fans like myself, but, it's kind of a shame to see what's happening in France. It kind of reminds me here back home what's going on in North America with so many baseball players now leaving Cuba.
I would agree. It seems, and I'm going to bring this up right now. UEFA has proposed some rule changes that would relate to homegrown players, trying to even out the talent distribution. And I think that's a great idea, And it's interesting because my dad is always like, oh, Europe, boo, Europe. And then I bring up the fact that Europe, one of the big issues is the talent distribution level, and he kind of just backs it to the side. But talent distribution is a big issue in soccer. You've gotten to the point where the big clubs buy the big players, and the rest of the teams are left to feed on leftovers. And it's not a good situation to be in. You see a lot of good teams struggling as a result of that, and the deficit between top and bottom, even now top and middle, it's like the U.S. is upper class and middle class. It's just growing and growing. The difference between them is just so massive now. But is there hope? And it's interesting because it comes from a big club. Angel Di Maria, who had a good start with Man U, fell off the face of the earth after that. He could be headed to PSG in a potential swap for Edison Cavani. But even in the event that they do get him by himself, it would be a massive coup for PSG. An excellent world-class player. Jake, do you think it'll happen? And would you do the move if you were PSG?
I'm not sure if I would do it if I'm PSG. I think there's better ways to spend that money. I think there's more efficient ways to spend that money. And I think sometimes what happens is when you pay so much for somebody, you immediately give them standards that are way too high to even meet, no matter how well they actually do end up playing.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And, I mean, to be fair, though, Di Maria is a guy who's shown himself as a world-class player. The swap with Cavani is what I think makes it questionable for PSG. And it's because, as we know, Ibrahimovic is God, but he does age. He's one of those kinds of gods. And at this point, they do need that player for the future, and Cavani will be the centerpiece. As much as he's hated playing second fiddle, it's part of a process, as Louis van Gaal would say. He's in the process. And they do need him, and I think for that reason they won't make the deal happen. Di Maria has been added to Manchester United's preseason squad list, so I do think he will end up staying. On the other side, as I just said, Marseille got raided. So there is the question of whether Marseille can maintain themselves as a good team. And so I'll ask you this, Jake. Can Marseille survive the loss of debatably their three best players?
I don't know. I think they will still be able to make it interesting. I think that just because they've lost some of their best talent does not mean that this season is necessarily dead. I think they're a creative club, and I think that they will find a way to make it work.
Mm-hmm. I do agree that they will find a way to make it work. However, I think this really hurts their chances of making a potential run at a Champions League spot, and I think it's going to take them a little bit of time to really develop as a cohesive unit. You lose your top goal scorer, you lose your best playmaker, another key player in AU, and you really do have to work on filling in those spots and figuring out who fits where and how you're going to play it. And now we're going to go back to positive things. El Shaarawy, of course, once considered one of the most talented players in the world. A very star. I mean, he was supposed to be a star. He really hasn't panned out quite that way. Nonetheless, it's a good signing for Monaco. Monaco, of course, dropping out of the top two this year after losing Radamel Falcao and James Rodriguez, two of their big signings the year before. However, they do bring in El Shaarawy. Jake, do you think this is a move that is going to push them in that direction of getting back in the top two?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that, when you look at a player like El Shaarawy, and we've seen what he can do, and last year, that sort of battle for the top two, there really wasn't too much separation. After all, only 6 points separated second place Lyon and fifth place Saint-Etienne. So you've got all the teams right there battling, and I think such a huge addition like El Shaarawy really will make a difference. And I think that, the addition of Shaarawy may have cemented their top two bet.
And now, in the biggest transfer saga that is going on, debatably in the world, you see a guy like Alexander Lacazette. I mean, a star, without a doubt. The guy scored 27 goals last year in Ligue 1, led all goal scorers, valued at a pretty high price. Lyon seemed to be pushing it towards the 40 million, 50 million pound number, but the chances of that happening are probably slim. You've got a lot of teams in for him. Liverpool and Arsenal out in the open. There are rumors, as Louis van Gaal did say, that he was going to sign a surprise player. There are rumors that is going to be striker Alexander Lacazette. However, Lyon have remained adamant that they refuse to sell him for anything less than they have put his his value at. So the question is, and this he will eventually leave. It's the same with Lewandowski. It's the same with all these very talented players. Eventually they leave. But the question for you, Jake, is how long before Alexander Lacazette is wearing the jersey of a big club like an Arsenal, like a Liverpool, like a Man United?
It's a tough one because you really don't know how much you want to believe the rumors, but with every big player, one of those rumors ends up being true at some point. And with a guy like Lacazette, again, 27 goals last year, you just have to think to yourself, he's just too good of a player to keep playing on Lyon. And I think that Lyon is really going to have to continue to push and actually contend for first place this year. If they don't, and if PSG win by 3 points or more,